everybody, Tim Stafford, Michael Erre here. Welcome to the Vox Podcast. Thank you for giving us some time and attention. We need both. Those are our love languages when it comes to podcasting, and so thank you. Let me tell you, we're in this great season of our podcast where we're just trying to unfilter the words of Jesus to us in the midst of all that's crazy. I mean, we've got like literally the United States is on fire. Metaphorically, the United States is on fire. And it's just so freaking dark out there. I mean, it is really, really tough to be a fully orbed, healthy human person and absorb the division, the tension, the strife, the hatred, the smoke. I mean, it is tough to try to just keep your sanity these days. So we are glad to be centering in this time around the words of Jesus as they come to us in the Sermon on the Mount. We're going to continue to do that today. We have a couple pieces of business first. Timothy.
Busyness.
Yes. Alicia, Kendra, Jackie, and Amy joined our little Patreon community this week.
Oh.
So thank you, ladies. Look at the ladies.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing that. That is so kind of you. And if you don't know what Patreon is, it's a kind of an artistic giving platform where people can support, encourage, fund different endeavors. And there is a way to donate. We are a 501c3, and so everything is tax deductible. But the biggest thing is that so many people believe in what's happening, and that we get the opportunity to do this and not have to pay for the privilege of doing this. And so we're very grateful. Thank you, welcome, and we very much appreciate you.
And Mike just dropped a new Revelation episode on there. That is just for Patreon list or Patreon. What do you call them? Subscribers,
supporters,
patrons.
Yeah, first one.
So there are some perks in there.
Yeah, irregular perks.
Maybe that should be the new name of the podcast.
Oh, that's perfect.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to Irregular Perks.
Yep. Tim, you would be great for that podcast.
For Irregular Perks?
Yep.
That might be my calling.
So I have to confess, I got out of therapy an hour ago. I'm super tired today. I think we're recording on a Friday, and it's just kind of like, it was a long week. It was every week is a long week. I'm not even sure it's Friday, but we think it is. We have a suspicion that today turns out to be Friday.
My computer says FRI.
Perfect.
So.
And our computers are never wrong. So here's what we're going to do. We weeks ago said that we wanted to look at some of the political implications of the Sermon on the Mount, because what Jesus is inaugurating turns out to be a political entity, a community of human persons that is transnational, transethnic, that is beyond the borders of nation states and the territories defined by ethical racial labels, and to have a community of people who exist under the generous kingship of Jesus to become the vanguard of the new creation that is coming. And as everyone knows, we have done not a great job of this. And so we figured in the midst of all of this craziness, we wanted to remind ourselves that the kingdom of God is political. It's not partisan, but it's political. The statement that Jesus is Lord calls into question all other political allegiances, and the heralding of the kingdom of God actually calls in to the values that undergird our whole democratic process. So this isn't about becoming a Republican or a Democrat or finding the Bible's way to vote. This is much more about becoming the kind of person that Jesus envisioned when he dreamt up his community and began with 12 disciples. And in that community, you find the meek and the poor in spirit and the persecuted. You find those that are peacemakers and those that are merciful. And you find folks, like myself, who don't fall neatly into any of those categories, but, fall into the more like, used to be a jerk, still a jerk, working on it, but loves Jesus kind of person. And when those people get together, their social life together is to have a kingdom flavor. And that kingdom flavor has been represented by the teachings of Jesus on, listen, we don't tolerate hypocrisy. We deal with root issues and not just symptoms, right? The law, as good and glorious as the Torah was and is, it was always meant to address the heart. And what Jesus is doing is he's redefining common understandings of different verses from the Old Testament, and he is showing how his teaching and his person actually will end up fulfilling them in a way that reveals their true intention from the outset. So in his kingdom, the politics of Jesus's kingdom are not built on anger and contempt, and that rules out most of our political engagement already. The politics of Jesus aren't built on lust, whether that is lust sexually or lust for more, the idea of coveting. The idea of Jesus's kingdom is that women are safe. They're not sexualized. They're not objectified. They're not seen as temptresses and have to dress modestly so that men can handle being around them, right? This is all the stuff we've been dealing with. Now we get to a text that our friend Aline is going to read for us that doesn't seem to have the same sort of resonance initially that the other topics of lust, divorce, anger, contempt have had. But as it turns out, this one is foundational to them all. So, Aline, take it away.
Again, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made. But I tell you, do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one.
Aline Strickler, the voice of an angel. Thank you for reading that, Aline. So what we want to do is we want to go through this. Remember, Jesus is undercutting the rightness, the righteousness of the Pharisees at the same time. He is illustrating what the rightness of the kingdom looks like. And so, he's not only projecting something that's beautiful and good, but he's also undercutting its alternative. And so I need to get into some background, shockingly,
Take us back.
To understand the practice of oath-taking. Because when we talk about swearing, we're not talking about cussing or vulgarity. We talk about swearing, we're talking about invoking a third party to witness something. And so when Jesus says, you've heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made. He's actually summarizing a couple of different passages there. We'll get to those in a second and we'll put them in context, but it's not just one thing he's summarizing. And then he gets into, well, do not swear an oath at all. And then he uses these really weird examples of by heaven or Jerusalem or earth or even you're the hair on your head, which for some of us is easier than others. So I need to give some background, because what Jesus is doing is he's taking a practice that was very, very common in his day. So common, there's actually a whole tractate in the Mishnah dedicated to oaths and which oath formulas are binding and which objects of oaths are binding and all of this craziness. So I want to explain that, because people in the ancient world, what they would do is they would invoke a god or one of the gods to affirm a statement, and then usually add an oath formula to it, which promised harm would come to them if they did not fulfill their oath. So a very common one, if you're familiar in the Old Testament, is, "May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if." And then you would go and make your oath. And so this was very, very common. It had nothing to do with cussing and profanity. So I want to just kind of give a super dumb, made up right now example of what we're talking about. All right.
On the spot, brand new.
Here it is.
Super fresh.
This super fresh. This is, I've received therapy. I'm tired. I'm looking at Tim Stafford, and this is what my brain comes up with. All right.
Perfect.
So let's say we have a couple of Jewish farmers who live next door to each other, and they have a long established boundary. And the way so there's a lot in the law about boundary markers, like, when does my property begin and end? I mean, Americans, understand this a bit. And so, and there's actually regulations to dispute property. Like, how do you handle property disputes? And so let's say, Peter the Pharisee lived next to Judy, the ordinary Jewish woman.
Peter the Pharisee and Judy, the ordinary Jewish woman.
Yes.
Neighbors.
Live next. They're neighbors. They're farmers. And there's been a long-running dispute over pasture lands. And so there's this boundary marker that keeps moving back and forth. Her shepherds will go out and move the boundaries at night. His will move them, blah, blah, blah. Let's just say, I don't even know. Let's say that's true. And often you would, in such a scenario, you would go to the town elders and you would appeal to them, and you would make an accusation. Let's say Judy wants to accuse Peter of moving the boundaries and taking some of her pasture land. What she would do is that she would swear an oath, and it's similar, but it would be something like, I swear by the name of Yahweh, or I swear by the name of the Jerusalem temple, or I swear by whatever, X, Y, and Z. And what you would be doing there is that you would be invoking some authority that everybody agreed was sacred to bolster the claim that you were making that your statement was true. Right? That's what an oath, in essence, that's what an oath did. That you would drag God into your appeal, and you would use God's name to make your case more persuasive, right? To give it more heft, to add more weight.
So she's saying, Pete moved those boundary lines while we were sleeping, and I am swearing that, and if I break that oath, may he deal with me ever so.
Totally. Yeah, or if this isn't true, may he deal with me, be it ever so severely.
Yeah.
So there was a practice, and this was very common in the ancient Near East, not surprisingly, that you would invoke gods and goddesses as witnesses to treaties. And we see this very early in Genesis around wells and all sorts of things. All right. So this was just an oath formula. And this was a way that you would add weight to the claims or assurances or promises you were making. And it was thought that those things mattered. Now, because that was the common practice, by the time in Exodus when God reveals his name to his people, the name of Yahweh, it's not surprising. The name of God in the Old Testament, and we could spend a whole podcast on this, names in the Old Testament weren't just monikers. They weren't just things you called people. They were destinies. They revealed someone's essence. So when you read that Jacob's name was deceiver, right? That tells you something about Jacob. It's not just his name, right? My parents didn't name me Mike because they envisioned a Mike kind of life for me, right? There was just, well, Mike sounds good. It seems like a great name, so let's just name him Mike. With Yahweh, that name, in fact, there were times in the Old Testament where God was simply known as the name, capital N, right? The name was Yahweh. I mean, that there wasn't this, like, you can invoke the name of Yahweh without dealing directly with Yahweh, right? That's the two were intertwined. So it's not surprising that you get prohibitions against using Yahweh's name in oath formulas.
Yeah.
So the biggest one is, and this is the heavy command, you shall not misuse the name of the Lord, your God. And the older translations say you will not take his name in vain. But the Hebrew literally means you shall not attach his name to an empty thing. And so attaching his name to a person, attaching his name to a statement, attaching his name to an oath, if those things are empty, then you have misused God's name. You've taken it in vain. Nothing to do about cussing here. All right?
Yeah.
This is, I'm invoking Yahweh as an eyewitness, but I've said something false. And I'm using the name of Yahweh to try to manipulate and add weight to the point where the other people are doing what I want them to do or believing what I want them to believe.
Right. Okay.
And when you attach it to something empty, then you've taken it in vain. There was a more specific prohibition in Leviticus. Leviticus 19, do not swear falsely by my name and so profane the name of your God.
Yeah.
I am the Lord. All right. So, point 1, oath taking, very, very common. Point 2, early in the story, once the name of Yahweh was given, prohibitions came against using the name of Yahweh in oaths. So what we as great creative human persons do is we developed a practice where we could swear by things that were associated with Yahweh, but weren't Yahweh directly. And Jesus gives
Yahweh adjacent.
Yes, Yahweh adjacent. I like that. So Jesus gives several examples, right? Either by heaven, so heaven would be something you could swear by, or earth, or Jerusalem, or your head. I swear on my head. Or if you people, we've seen today, people say, well, I swear on my mother's grave. Right? Or I swear on the Bible. So help me God. Right? We have oath formulas too. Yeah. So we still do the same kinds of things. Like, I swear to God, this is what happened. Right?
Just to lend some weight to your statement.
Yep. If I really want you to know I'm serious, I'll throw something at you like that. Like, I swear to all that's holy, this is what happened. Right? So, what began to happen is that people began to do two things. Number one, they would use substitutes for Yahweh. And Jesus gives earth, heaven, temple, and head as an example.
Earth, wind, and fire.
And those as well. And what they would happen is that they would then scale the weight of oaths. And what I mean here is, if there were certain, if you made an oath by the gold of the altar, it was binding. But if you made the oath by the altar itself, without referring to the gold, it wasn't binding. Okay, so there were these gradations of truth-telling based on what you invoked.
So if you made an oath based on the gold, people are like, oh, dang, this is serious. But if you're like, you made an oath by the altar, it'd be like, maybe. So Jesus actually deals with this. If you want to read this, I'm going to read it briefly. But Jesus deals with this practice when he's rebuking the Pharisees. So there are two issues. One is swearing by Yahweh, and now they're substituting things that weren't Yahweh but associated with him. And then the second is making all of these stupid
to us distinctions between these fine lines between swearing by this versus this. And Jesus deals with that second one in Matthew 23. He says, "Woe to you, blind guides. You say," and he quotes them, "if anyone swears by the temple, it means nothing. But anyone who swears by the gold of the temple is bound by that oath." Right? So that was what the Pharisees were teaching. If you swear by the temple, it's fine. But if you swear by the gold of the temple, well, that means you're bound by it. He responds to that by saying, "You blind fools, which is greater, the gold or the temple that makes the gold sacred? You also say, if anyone swears by the altar, it means nothing, but anyone who swears by the gift on the altar is bound by that oath. You blind men, which is greater, the gift or the altar that makes it the gift sacred? Therefore, anyone who swears by the altar swears by it and by everything on it. And anyone who swears by the temple swears by it and the one who dwells in it. And anyone who swears by heaven swears by God's throne and the one who sits on it." In other words, right, that the dumb distinctions that were being made there do not hold in God's eyes.
Yeah.
Right? Because actually, if you swear by anything, you're swearing by Yahweh.
Yeah.
Because Yahweh is all and in all and sits behind all. Now, that is Jesus's exact line of argumentation when we come back to the Sermon on the Mount. Right? He says, again, you've heard it was said to the people long ago, "Do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made. But I tell you, do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne," right? So you're trying to avoid swearing by Yahweh and you invoke heaven? Sorry. That's the Yahweh's throne. Or earth, it is his footstool. That's a quote from the Psalms. Right. Or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot even make one hair white or black. All you need is simply yes or no. Anything beyond that comes from the evil one. Now, notice what he's done. First, he's done what he did in Matthew 23. Every other substitute you use for Yahweh actually is still a reference to Yahweh.
Yeah.
Right? So you want to swear by heaven? Great. He dwells there. The earth, he dwells here. Your head, you can't even control the hair that grows. What are you talking about? God made that. Right? There's nothing that's less. You can't swear by anything. But then what he does, and this, my goodness, if you're with us still through this is where it gets super interesting. He goes after why they swear oaths at all. So it's not just the way they were taking oaths was wrong, but it was why people felt the need to use them to begin with. Oh, snap.
So it's genius because he's delineating like the way that we weight importance on these things all the way. Like it's just a constant, like it's like one of those little Russian packing dolls.
Yep. So on the one sense, he's dealing with the symptom. Hey guys, you can't play these games. It's all Yahweh. So stop. But secondly, let's go after why you even need to swear an oath to begin with. Oh, now Dallas Willard. Okay, so one of the best books on the Sermon on the Mount is this chunk in a book called The Divine Conspiracy, which is one of my top 3 books of all time ever. And Willard goes through the Sermon on the Mount. And here's a quote from The Divine Conspiracy. There are several that I'm going to refer to. But here's one where he talks about what Jesus has just done in this verse, all right? The essence of swearing that Jesus targets here is about invoking something or someone else, especially God, to make your own words seem more significant and weighty. The aim is to impress others with your seriousness or piety so that you can get what you want.
Yeah.
It's a device of manipulation designed to override the judgment or input of others in order to possess them for our purposes. It is manipulation, or, as we say in our culture, it is spin. And Jesus says this is evil. Instead of loving and honoring others with truthfulness, the intent is to get one's way by verbal manipulation of the thoughts and choices of others. Holy moly, right? That's what the deal is. So his last line about just letting your yes, the Greek literally reads, let your word stand for itself. Yes, yes, no, no. It doesn't need any bolstering.
I feel like all the people that have been sitting at the feet as he's been going through this, like I'm always, every time we start, I'm trying to remember the through line and everything he's already said.
Yeah.
And I feel like they must be exhausted.
Well, remember, he's not giving law. He's using illustrations.
Right. But it's just like so much of the world there and here is being, I mean, we're doing this in 7-day intervals.
Right.
They're doing this in real time. And I feel like they're like, whoa.
Yeah. I mean, this oath-taking was so common for Jesus to say, don't swear at all. Now, he's using hyperbole because like Peter swears an oath and God swears an oath by himself. I mean, so of course there's nuance here. But where it really clicks in for us is swearing as verbal manipulation.
Yeah.
That's oath-taking as verbal manipulation. It's the way we hide and manipulate other people, which is what Willard is pointing out. And
Willie.
Yeah. I don't even know what to say to that.
Sorry.
God rest his soul. I don't think he's ever been called that by anybody ever, but he should be. And
it's a remix.
Yes. Divine Conspiracy remix. And so the idea is that Jesus cuts right to the heart of why we try to manipulate. Now, let's talk about how this looks, because invoking, let's use it in two different ways. All right. One, and it's the two ways that oath-taking was wrong. One is the gradation of truth, right? If you make an oath by this, you have to keep your word. But if you make an oath by that, you don't have to keep your word, right? So the gradations, that's one thing. The other thing that Jesus is dealing with is, why do you have to make oaths to begin with? It's all going back to Yahweh, right? So you can't just, so on the one hand, you have casual speech to death in our world about, I'll be there. Yeah, I'll call you back. Mm-hmm. Sure, I'll pray for you. Right? None of those things are true. We all know they're not true. They have no integrity most of the time. But the idea in the second category of invoking God to add weight to something.
Yeah.
Oh, my word. Christian culture, Mike Erre and the church have just done horrendous damage. Right? Because, and Gombas, kind of goes at this a little bit in one of our earlier episodes, but it's like, how can you argue with, well, God told me?
Right.
Right? You're invoking God to back up whatever it is you want to do. And so taking the Lord's name in vain is not saying, God damn it. Right. Taking the Lord's name in vain is using empty Christian talk to justify selfish motives and interests, right? That's taking the Lord's name in vain. That's the kind of swearing that Jesus is super interested in. Because we do that all the time. As a church, hey, God's leading in this direction. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know. The leadership read a business strategy book, and we prayed at a couple of business meetings for maybe 10 minutes. And other than that, I didn't think a whole lot about it. But, the pastor came in and made this persuasive case about this. We took a survey of our church, and this area really needs growth. So it seems like God's calling us this way.
Yep.
Or, no, we just thought it was a good idea.
See, yeah, this has just been, and we talked about this on the phone yesterday. This idea of Christian rhetoric has been like a thorn in my side for about a long time. And that example that you just gave there, I think, is a really interesting one, because it's so what is the right version of that, right? So there is that meeting. Hey, God told us this is the direction we're going, or God told us that we're going to do this, or God told us that we're going to do this, and maybe it was just reading a book and not a lot of thought, or maybe they sat and talked about it for like 3 months and still came to this decision that God decided this was the direction to go in. However, it is so hard to parse that out, and God is not in the business of sending emails, so it's difficult to. So would the right version of that to be, like the honest version of that to be, we talked about this and prayed about this a lot. We're going to go in this direction. We might be wrong. Or you know what I mean? Like giving yourself, that's the wrong way to say that, but like, right? Like not speaking with such huge authority that you are speaking on behalf of God, or I don't know how to phrase that.
No, that's the key question. And I don't know that I have a good answer other than what they did in the book of Acts when they met for the Jerusalem Council. It was Paul and Peter meeting with Gentiles, and then the Judaizers were saying, no, the Gentiles have to become Jewish, and then they can worship Jesus. They have this huge confab about it that it's like, a couple of paragraphs. But they write this letter, and it says, it seemed good to the Holy Spirit and to us that, ... And I always thought that language is super interesting, because there also, of course, in the Bible is prophetic language. Like later on in Acts, it's, hey, Jerusalem is going to have a famine. God has said this, right? Or you're interpreting a dream and God has given me the interpretation of this dream. So there is room. I do think God directs and guides. I think it's impossible for us to make a definitive statement ahead of time. I think the only time we can make a definitive statement is in the rearview mirror. And I can see there, God led that. God guided me there. Yeah. But beforehand, I am way too complex a creature and I've just learned this about myself. I can over-spiritualize anything. I can over-spiritualize any damn thing I want. And that is tragic and horrific, and the damage. I mean, the horror stories I've heard, even about Christian dating, that somehow involve, hey, God told me we were going to be married. Yeah. I mean,
the poor girl.
Yeah. What? How do you? I mean, And so, what Gombis has recommended is, well, you just don't even go there. You just can't even go there. Don't even use that language. And I think there's something to that, for sure. I think that language is used, or you can use that language, but it's best in rearview mirror, affirmed by other people. Yeah. So as I make decisions, it no longer is, hey, God's calling me. I like it seemed good to us. Yeah. It seemed like this was the wise, because remember,
and if it looks like a left turn in hindsight, it's like, oh.
Yeah, maybe we blew it.
Yeah, I think that's such a huge thing that we're unwilling to do, and there's a lot of it in the mainstream media right now. Just saying like we were wrong.
Yeah,
and we'd like to be better at correcting that.
So first, the first example of this are all of the ways we as Christians invoke God, or hey, this is the biblical view. Right. Or this is what the Bible clearly says. Now, in some cases, that's really true. The Bible clearly does say X, but I've always found people use that phrase in cases where the Bible isn't as clear.
Right.
And so I don't know that you can always say the Bible's super clear on this. Yeah. Okay. How much study have you done on this, right? Have you read all the scholarship? Have you looked at the either original languages or their best interpreters and translators? Right. I mean, you just so I think there's a sense in which the God talk we use is a way of manipulating each other. And we have a dear friend going through a divorce, and the spouse who is being divorced, all right, is using God talk like you must submit to me. Quoting verses that are nothing like what Jesus would sound like if he were to quote them. But to do that in order to maintain power.
Yeah.
And so this actually, you deal with this one. The kingdom of God is to be a place where love of God and love of neighbor are foremost. What corrupts more than anything else the desire we have, either out of fear or out of a need for control or power or whatever, that we manipulate each other by using God talk.
Yep.
And so it is endemic in the Christian community. And a lot of the modern worship music feeds it because it's just teaching me about me and Jesus and how I'm feeling about Jesus. And I don't mean to be the old guy saying, get off my lawn. I'm a huge fan of a lot of it. But the corrective to what we're seeing is like deeper involvement in community and deeper involvement in church and and I don't mean church as institution. I mean church as gathering together as the body of Jesus and practicing this stuff.
Worship is a great example of that because it is a lot of those songs. I'll be the old man on the lawn if you don't want to. Some of those songs it'll be a line of scripture and then a line from a completely different piece of scripture. They'll manipulate the lyrics to make a statement that none of the original things meant to say. And you'll be sitting there sometimes and you're like, I don't even know what I'm like. Right. Even in like a narrative, I don't even know what I'm singing. Like I don't even know what yeah. So you have get off my lawn.
Get them off. Those kids these days and their skateboards. So one place this has immediate application, I believe God guides, directs, speaks. Yeah. I just don't think you can definitively say it and use it as a bludgeon. Like that, man, I am so opposed to. That is immaturity and that is harm, man. That is harm. I can point out God's work often with 100% certainty in the rearview mirror. Oh my goodness, God pulled that together. That's ridiculous. But I've made so many mistakes about that, so many. And I found I have an endless capacity for spiritual justification. So, all right, but let's probe a little little further into this, Timothy.
Yes. I'm ready.
Think about the political environment we live in. Spin is literally, we have a word for this, and it's with a spin room, baby, and it's totally tolerated. It's accepted as a normal part of human discourse that we will mislead, tell half the truth, focus on the worst in our opponents, the best in ourselves, right? I mean, we will not apologize. We will not be humble. We will never admit ground. We'll never find compromise. I mean, that whole way of orienting is antithetical to the project of the kingdom of God in Christ. You cannot participate in both. Right? Not fully, not with full allegiance and engagement. You can try, but I mean, if your Facebook feed is nothing but you slamming other people with memes and talking points, that is not the way of Christ. It's just not. And if you think you're doing the kingdom of God any favors by doing that, or me, right? I mean, that's taking the Lord's name in vain, just as sure as anything else. When you put Christian on your bio and then you're mean, you know, and a jerk, and you don't care because in the name of rightness, you know, you're just going to slam anybody who has a different opinion. I mean, that's taking God's name in vain. The most empty thing God's name can be attached to is us. Right? So swearing, man, that has very little to do with what language you use when it comes to God's name. It has everything to do with how we verbally manipulate each other.
Yeah.
And especially as a Christian and publicizing yourself as a Christian to spin and to do image management, right? That is antithetical to the kingdom. Absolutely. And yet, look at our social media feeds, our Instagram posts. I mean, even churches, it's all beautiful people being happy all of the time, being young and awesome. And I just want to puke my guts out. right? I used to be young and awesome, and even then it wasn't that great.
I used to be young and awesome, and look where it got me.
Yes, old, angry. Get off
but
my...
I got a nice lawn.
Yep, and I read D. Willie sitting on my
D. Willie.
Yeah, sitting in my hammock, my nice yard. All right, so we have we kingdom people are to practice a politics of truth telling. And that doesn't mean like jerkwad, you're an idiot truth telling and you're going to burn in hell. That means literally we are seeking truth. We are the God of light. We follow light wherever it leads us. We're not afraid of science. We're not afraid of investigation. We're not afraid of accountability. We're not afraid of confession. We're not afraid of not having the perfect image. I mean, just imagine the face of the evangelical church. And we just started confessing, literally started confessing our sins.
Yeah.
I mean, people today aren't expecting us to be perfect, but just to be honest would be such a great start.
Yeah, or people are expecting us to be perfect because we project this
them.
thing that, yeah, or that we tell them that we are. So, you know what I mean? Like we project this idea of we are perfect in our faith.
Yeah.
Therefore, we're the unblemished ones.
Yes,
and then when the blemishes are finally exposed, it's like,
oh,
hey yo,
hello. Then let's push this a little further.
Let's go.
Because so far, I've ragged on past me as a Christian user of, well, this seems like God's will. And I've ragged on other people on Facebook who post memes but Jesus here confronts me with all of the ways I present myself that are not authentic too. All of the ways again, it's not taking an oath. Like I look at that practice like, oh, dude, I'd never do that. But if you define oath taking, and the reason we take oaths as manipulating each other verbally, well, good night. I mean, that opens up everything. Think about name droppers. What are they doing when people are name dropping? What are they telling you? Because I'm associated with this important person, I am important.
Yep.
Or when I get asked a hard question in front of an audience that I'm supposed to be like one of the smartest people in the room, and I don't know the answer, and I start BSing anyway, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I'm using my words as a screen. I'm hiding. I'm manipulating. I'm not. One of the things I learned in therapy. So I was at this center in Tennessee early in January for an intense, they call it an intensive for 6.5 days of group therapy, and around sexual issues. And so there were some people there who were still hiding from the information from their spouses. And the therapist said something that I think Jesus would totally agree with. Confession, by not confessing, you're not giving your spouse the choice. You're robbing them of free will. You're not honoring their dignity. Right? Hiding the truth, hindering the truth, slanting the truth. All of that isn't honoring other people as image bearers. That's not loving your neighbor.
Yeah.
Right? And so what's confession do? Confession gives people a choice.
Yeah.
That's
scary.
Huh?
And that can be scary.
Oh, it's unbelievably scary. That's what we've been hiding from the whole time.
Yep.
Is the choice. Right? And so, I mean, I used to, I remember in fourth grade, I had a parent conference. Third or fourth grade, I'm thinking it's fourth. Mrs. Klein's class. And Mrs. Klein, and this is one of the few memories I have of my parents married. They divorced when I was 9. But they were in our classroom, and Mrs. Klein said, "Oh, I'm sorry that Michael was in the hospital. How's he doing?" And my parents look at each other and are like, he's not been in the hospital. And I feel this, for the first time, I felt that weight of, oh. So they excuse me out into the hallway. I have no memory of what happened after this. but I remember that I felt like I had to top whatever anybody else had been doing that weekend by coming up with something extravagant.
Right.
So yeah, I remember saying I was in the hospital while I watched the football game or something. Right? Just so idiotic. And what Jesus is getting at is all of that stuff. It's not just, so help me God, although that's a part of it. And it's not just the casual language that we don't even mean half the time that we say. That's part of it. But he's getting at the fact that the reason we can't let our words stand is because our words aren't designed to be honest. They're designed to protect us, and they're designed to impress others and to, harm or whatever. Our words are never designed to convey accurate information, at least not often.
Yeah.
I don't really trust people with my feelings. I don't really trust people with my opinions. I don't really do that because there's such high consequence for doing so. And so we just have, it's like pro-life. Okay. If I'm pro-life, evidently that means I can be the biggest, meanest, awfulest person about the people who are born. But if I'm pro-life, then I fit into the super group. Or if I'm pro-choice, right? I mean, those labels do all the work.
Right.
Right? They're not honoring us as image bearers. Is this making sense?
Yeah.
And I'm asking that because I finished that rant. I'm like, does that even make sense? Am I ranting into the void?
Into the void, into the great wide open.
And I guess I get fired up, Tim, because I'm so guilty of this. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you just, it's great. We should just be people that are known as truth tellers, and folks that don't need to bolster our claims by attaching something that we think carries more weight. We should just be people that are known as just
let your word stand on its own. And I'm like, man, that way of translating it's like, whoa, that's so good. So I don't know, man. I just sit and I go, okay. Part of me is an outward processor. So sometimes I don't even know what I think until I start talking. And then I'll contradict myself 5 minutes later because I talk myself into a new position.
Right.
So I want grace for that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't know. There's this great verse in Ecclesiastes about, and I'm gonna not remember it correctly, but it ends with, you are God in heaven and I'm here on earth, and so I'll let my words be few. It's also a worship song somewhere.
Yep,
but
it sure is.
Maybe I'm quoting the worship song rather than the Bible, but it's based on a passage.
Few, Jesus, I'm so in love with you.
Oh, no. Isn't that... No. Is that where it went?
I don't know. I think so.
No.
That was an oldie.
Oh, I think I quoted it, though. I want to look. I didn't quote the Bible. I quoted an old worship song. Anyway, I think there's something to say about that as I've, talked for the last hour. Let the guy who's been talking for an hour say, let your words be few. Oh, I don't know, man. This stuff this wrecks me. So it's Jesus. I mean, just reimagine a community where anger was worked on, where contempt wasn't tolerated and reconciliation pursued, where women were safe and not objectified, where commitments were honored except in the most extreme circumstances, and where your yes was yes and your no was no, and you didn't feel the need to spin or claim credit for stuff you didn't do, or invent stays in the hospital just to feel special or whatever. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the kind of thing that changes the world, doesn't it?
I think maybe.
So I had a question come in that deals with this. And this will be a good way to end it, because this throws a wrench into the whole works. All right. So the question, and literally it says from Loki, Loki, which I love that. If you're throwing in questions, your name's Loki. Unless I'm mispronouncing it, you're going to get airtime. I mean, that's just absolutely the way that's going to happen. Hi guys, love what you're doing. Enjoyed the Sermon on the Mount breakdown. My question is in reference to a comment you made. Is there a time to lie in the Bible? Jesus gave exceptions to breaking the Sabbath. Could there be a time when lying is appropriate? And she actually gives an answer to her own question. She references in Exodus where the Hebrew midwives lie to Pharaoh. They're supposed to murder the Hebrew infants, but they don't, and they look at Pharaoh and say, "Oh, by the way, yeah, those Hebrew mothers, man, they give birth before we can even get there. Sorry." And that's a total lie. And God is kind to them and gives them families of their own, it says. She even references Rahab, right? The spies come into the land, right? They stay at Rahab, the prostitute's house. And the king of Jericho's like, "Hey, where were those guys?" "I don't know." She hid them upstairs.
Yeah.
All right. And so is there a time when lying is appropriate? Well, in the kingdom, when it comes in its fullness, there'll be no need to lie. But because the kingdom has not come in its fullness, I think utterly and absolutely there are times to lie. If I am hiding Jews from Nazis, yes, I'm lying.
Yeah.
If I can protect an innocent person's life by lying, then I will lie.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so doesn't that throw a wrench in the works? Yes and no. Yes, in the sense of, well, I thought your yes was supposed to be yes and your no.
Right.
Well, true. Absolutely true. But the ethics of Jesus are given as examples of the kind of rightness of the kingdom that was in this context used against oath taking. When in other places, Jesus' Father very clearly blesses people who have deceived those in power from harming God's people, they've not been condemned. So clearly there is a place to do that.
Yeah.
And if you've ever been married, you know darn well there are times you have to lie. Did you eat that last piece of pie? No.
Yes, I did.
I say no.
In my house, because my wife doesn't like pie.
Oh man, the best those.
Well, last week though, you brought up like, how did you phrase it? God is the idea that God was meeting humanity kind of where it was, and that
calling
God
us
was.
Forward.
What was the word you used? Concession, right?
Right. Conceding to us.
This whole Sermon on the Mount series for me has been like, everything that Jesus is saying and doing, I'm tracking with, he's upending these ideas and these long-standing practices and bringing it back to heart posture or something, to use lack of a better term. But there's this idea even in that, like, that there is this constant, that the world is off its axis, and has God found, are there moments where lying has been, that God has been like, yeah, that's fine, sure, in this world that's off the axis? Is that the ideal? No. Should we be trying to build communities where we are known as truth speakers, and trust is built on truth, not on bravado or you know what I mean? So you can kind of see both those fixtures of like, this is the world as it is, and we're trying, we're striving, or is it even a matter of trying to build the kingdom exactly, or just to try to get people to fix their posture in a way that they're moving in the direct, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Creating this perfect community where everybody...
He's not trying to create a perfect community.
Exactly. Yeah.
But nor is he just giving us a bunch of hopeless ideals to remind us how much we need him.
Exactly.
Because he's going to end this by saying, no, do this.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I get all that. I'm tracking with all that, and I like this. It's freeing in a way because it gives you direction, and it doesn't give you condemnation in the failure. If that makes sense.
Jesus is just unpacking what it means to love our neighbor.
Yeah, exactly. That was in my head at the beginning of this, like the idea of loving God and loving your neighbor.
Be reconciled with them when you're angry. Don't covet their spouse or their property. Yeah. Keep your promises. Be a person of your word. Now, we lie, or at least I should say I lie. The majority of my lies have to do with social situations. I don't want to do something. And so, I can't do that. Sorry. Or I don't want to do that, but I feel awkward just saying no.
Yeah.
Right? This is where people pleasing can be so toxic, right? Is because you actually end up really being destructive. Because you just don't have the guts to say, no, I'm not interested in that. Thanks. You know? And so, and I think there's a place of health for like boundaries and those sorts of things. I haven't found a gracious way of doing that for me yet. So I think I think when we talk of lying, I think we're lying in ways that are just cowardly, right? They're not, I want to be seen as good, so I minimize this truth and maximize that truth. You know what I mean? It's just, so that's the kind of stuff. And I think Jesus speaks against that all over the place. What we're talking about when we're like protecting innocent lives, though, I think that's really clear cut. Yeah. I have no flinch at all about saying, if it was the Underground Railroad and we're freeing slaves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you look at a perfect kingdom or a perfect world that God built and that Jesus is trying to reconcile or whatever, there wouldn't be Nazis and there wouldn't be slavery. Right. And you know what I mean? So
but even in the world where there are those things, the most of life can be dealt with in a truthful way if we're courageous and gentle enough.
Yeah.
Because the reason I am not truthful is because of fear. Mm-hmm. Right? That's why I want to verbally manipulate people. You know? Yeah. And I don't... No? I mean, I don't know. Totally. I'm just processing it with you. I don't know. I may contradict myself next time.
No. I'm totally... this idea of being super active in your faith, and that you should be active in your faith to the end, right? That there is no plateau, that there is no I've made it, I'm comfortable, I have achieved everything that Jesus had in mind for me, I have arrived, I am now a Christian with capital C. That the fact that doesn't exist, because I think that churches do sometimes project that idea that we have a community of like-minded, safe, blah, blah, blah. But this idea that Jesus is like, I'm always going to be quick to anger. I'm going to have to work against that. Yeah. I deal with coveting. I'm going to have to work against that. Yeah. And so that requires action on my part. Yes. I'm speaking on behalf of Pete, the farmer still. But right, like I have to work, or Pete has to work hard against those things, totally. And most likely always will. Yep. So Jesus is really laying out something that you have to participate in. Yeah. At least how I'm seeing. Like that's how I like. It's comforting for me because I have struggled with what is my role to play in all of this, and it's becoming more galvanized and clear to me how clear that role is to play. Yeah. 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 I don't know where to go other than, okay, giddy up. I mean, the words of Jesus always challenge and comfort. Yeah, exactly.
And if they're not doing both, then we're not doing a good enough job getting at what they're really saying.
Yeah.
Because how can anybody, I mean, if I'm in touch with my anger, contempt, lust, manipulating, how in the world do I have emotional room left over to stand, in righteous anger and judgment against whoever they are? You know what I mean? I don't know. I think that Michael Jackson said it best. I'm looking at the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to make a change.
There you have it, folks.
That's a 90s. I think 90s, right?
That's 80s.
Is that 80s? Okay. Anyway, 80s reference. My friends, brothers and sisters, you're awesome. Thank you. Thanks for the honor of being conversation partners with us and allowing us space into your life and day and thinking. And as always, we're grateful. We really are, for the trust that you give us. And let's keep learning together. All right? Till next time, friends.
Thank you for listening to this conversation. The Vox Podcast is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is supported by listeners like yourself. If you'd like to partner with us, you can do so at patreon.com/Vox Podcast. You can also engage with the hosts on social media at facebook.com/Vox Podcast, on Instagram at Vox Podcast, and on Twitter at Mike Erre. Thank you for walking this road with us.